Alright, so if you are watching this video, then that means Lugia is back in raid battles, and you are looking to find a guide that will tell you how to defeat this boss pretty easily. Now there's a theme with all of my raid guide videos. I try to give you the best amount of information as possible that will allow you to defeat this boss with the most minimum number of trainers as possible. But unfortunately for Lugia, this is one of the more bulkier Pokemon that you could go up against. This is definitely one of the highest defense Pokemon, so unfortunately a duo or a trio is next to impossible for the average player. But I'm still going to be giving you my guide for how you could beat Lugia. It's actually still a pretty easy boss. There's plenty of counters that you can use. So yeah, let's roll the intro and dive right into it. And how's it going, everyone? It's me, it's Count, here with a brand new Pokemon GO raid guide video. Today I'm going to be highlighting Lugia. Lugia is of course a flying and psychic type Pokemon, and for all of the OG Pokemon GO players out there, you would know that Lugia was one of the very first. In fact, he probably was considered the very first legendary Pokemon that we could go up against in raid battles. Of course, when they started introducing legendaries into raid battles, we had both Articuno and Lugia out, so yeah, you could technically count this as one of the first. But even so, his significance has carried on pretty much throughout the entirety of Pokemon GO. In the Master League, he is actually a very popular pick, especially as a counter to a lot of the Pokemon out there, and he does have some of the best flying type moves in the game, so if you're looking for a really good flying type, Lugia is actually going to be a really great Pokemon. Of course, you will want to pick up some really high IVs of this Pokemon, but unfortunately he is pretty difficult to bring down, even with some of the best counters. But if you want to defeat this Pokemon easily, then I suggest bringing any of the following counters. Of course, because he is a psychic type, you will want to bring any Pokemon that could deal with psychic types. For example, Mega Gengar is going to be probably one of the best Megas that you could bring, considering that Gengar has plenty of Ghost type moves that could decimate Lugia, and then of course the Mega bonus is going to help out a lot of your other Pokemon as well. You could also bring Mega Houndoom with Dark type moves, but unless you're packing your team with a whole bunch of Darkrai's, I suggest you go with Gengar, considering that the DPS output is just going to be that much higher. You could just top load your team with a whole bunch of Dark types and Ghost types, and you should be okay. I mentioned Darkrai, but you could also bring Giratina as well, and maybe even Tyranitar if you're running out of different options, but you could also go up against his flying type moves with some really good electric types as well. So let's say you're just having a lot of difficulty taking down this boss because of its powerful flying type moves, then you could opt to switch to a whole bunch of electric types. Raikou is always going to be a solid choice going up against this Pokemon, but you could also bring Pokemon like Zekrom. Zekrom is of course the highest damage dealing electric type right now, but of course it is a little bit squishier, so you can just mix and match with a lot of these different types and you should be okay. The nice thing about going up against Lugia at this point compared to when it was first released is that we all have a lot of nice counters that we can bring. Lugia doesn't necessarily have a lot of different moves that are going to be concerning, like of course some of its psychic type moves are going to be heavy hitters, but as long as you bring the right counters and you dodge properly, you should be okay. In terms of its fast moves, it can come with Extrasensory and Dragon Tail. You will want to avoid going up against Dragon Tail if you're top loading your team with Zekrom, but if you are going up against Extrasensory, then you will want to pack your team with a whole bunch of dark types. Now in terms of its charge moves, he does have quite a lot of heavy hitters. You will want to look out for Future Sight and Aeroblast, as well as Hydro Pump. But of course Hydro Pump is going to be weak against electric types, so if you're using a whole bunch of electric types, you should be okay. But Extrasensory and Future Sight are going to deal quite a lot of damage, even if you're bringing a whole bunch of Pokemon that counter psychic types. So do be on the lookout for that. Like I said at the top of this video, you will want to dodge as much as possible possible. A lot of Lugia's moves do hit pretty hard, and like I said, because it has a lot of defense and HP, you will want to make sure your Pokemon are able to survive as long as possible. Now I want to highlight some of the flying type moves that Lugia can have, more specifically with Sky Attack and Aeroblast. Aeroblast, of course, is his signature move, and technically it is a legacy move or an exclusive move, so you will not be able to TM into it unless you use an elite TM. So do be mindful of that. If you have Lugia in raid battles with Aeroblast, it's definitely worth farming up, so do keep that in mind. But when it comes to Aeroblast and when it comes to Sky Attack, they do not dish out as much damage as Future Sight, but I would still say that you should worry about them. If you go into a lobby and you see a whole bunch of electric types getting suggested, then I highly suggest you fill up your team with a whole bunch of electric types so that you could deal with this Pokemon. But let's say you are going up against flying type moves and you're just having a lot of trouble, well, you could also opt to go with Pokemon with rock type moves as well. Of course, I highly suggest you stick with the electric and dark and ghost types, considering that they could deal a lot more damage, but if you're still having trouble, then you could opt to use some rock types. Because of Lugia's typing, there's plenty of different advantages that you could give yourself, and there's plenty of Pokemon that are going to be strong against this Pokemon. Considering that it is a flying type, it's going to have plenty of weaknesses to ice types, rock types, and electric types, and then of course with Psychic, it will be weak against dark types and ghost types. Unfortunately, even though it is a Psychic type, it does synergize well with flying types, so you can't bring your bug Pokemon, for example, but really, bug Pokemon are not necessarily going to be that strong anyway. If you're looking for a 100% IV Lugia, then you will want one that has 2115 as its CP. And if you want a weather boosted Lugia, you will want 2645. Now when it comes to weather boosts, Lugia only gets boosted by one type, and that is of course windy weather. So if you want a weather boosted Lugia, you will want to go out when it is windy. And like I said before, unfortunately you will not be able to duo or trio this raid boss, but it is definitely doable with 4 trainers. So if you are getting only 4 trainers from your remote raid invites, you could be okay, but I highly suggest you make sure that all 4 players bring the right counters and you have some friendship bonuses and weather boosts as well. Of course, if you want to use a weather boost to your advantage, you will want to go out in rainy weather or foggy weather, because that is going to boost up all of your Pokemon that are strong against Lugia. So there you have it, everyone. Lugia is back in raid battles, and I really hope you found this guide to be helpful. If you did, make sure you share it with your friends and your raid mates so that you bring the right counters going up against this Pokemon. Again, I highly suggest you do not overestimate the power of Lugia's attacks as well as his defense, because a lot of people tend to have trouble with Lugia, considering that he looks like an easy boss, but he really is not. So make sure you go well prepared and farm up this Pokemon, because Aeroblast is going to be a very iconic move, especially when it comes to PvP. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, everyone. I am Jinsula. Make sure you're being safe and having fun, and I will catch you all later.